Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. This week you're going to be hearing an interview I did with Flo and Joan about their new one-man musical that is currently playing at the Underbelly Boulevard in Soho, and it's a musical about a composer that we all know and love. I'm sure you can guess who it is. If not, here is a lovely interview with Flo and Joan to tell you more about One Man Musical.
We are Flo and Joan, real names Nicola and Rosie Dempsey, and we are here to talk about One Man Musical.
Welcome to Musical Talk, the pair of you. Thank you so much for coming on. I saw the show a couple of nights ago, and I absolutely... I've always thought Lloyd Webber should do a musical about himself, but in a way I'm glad he didn't do it, because it takes someone else to look at it from a different angle and make it a lot more entertaining than he probably would. So tell me about this wonderful one-man musical that the pair of you have written.
It's a musical about Andrew Lloyd Webber. I think we tried to keep it a secret for a while, but I think enough publications have sort of named and shamed him that we're in the safe zone now. It's a one-man musical about Andrew Lloyd Webber, the kind of life and times of him and his career, and the kind of ups and downs through. We're comedians, so it's sort of through the satirical a satirical comedy lens, as opposed to, like you said, probably an incredibly earnest and slightly lacking in honesty version that the actual person might write about himself.
What I love about it is that it does come from an absolutely, yes, the comedy is there, but it's also incredibly loving as well. And you can tell you two are fans of the Lord, no matter, what your views on him as a composer or businessman. You can't deny that he has completely changed the face of West End theatre and theatre for the whole world.
Yes, yeah, it was definitely written with a heart, and it was his musicals that we first listened to as kids. It was sort of those musicals that our mum and nan would listen to and take us to. So it was our first access into, we love musicals, and he was sort of the opening door to that. But then obviously in our adult years, he creates very much more complicated opinions of someone who we once admired. So it was a good platform, I think, to write about someone, because it's very interesting to us, and our opinion always changes. If anything, I think we go a bit too easy on him, to be honest.
Honestly.
I want to say it almost felt like the music was too good to be linked to Andrew Lloyd Webber.
I will say, although I physically play it, if you like a song in it, it was probably Rosie's idea and Rosie's melody. So I can physically put my fingers on the piano and do it.
Yeah.
But
it's very much a 50-50, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. In music and lyrics and the book as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's annoyingly, again, his songs are just so in your DNA, because that's, like Rosie said, they're your sort of entry point as a kid, and they do just pop up all the time. So it was a lot easier annoyingly, it was quite easy to write in his style because it's not too complicated for the most part.
The odd 7/8 bar here or there just to put people off.
Yeah, things that he always has. He has a song in every show that's in 7/8, so that was an easy cool. You do that. But
that was the whole of the second song is. Oh no, not the whole. The verses of the second song are all 7/8, right?
Yeah,
7/8, and then a 4/4 chorus.
Yeah, we sort of tried to do the opening in 5/4, because I think he said he's the only person that's ever written an opening song in 5/4, and we were like, that's just boring. I can't be bothered. That's not a good. For a show that's already difficult to get people through the door, you want them to be able to stay without having to sit through a piece of 5/4 nonsense first thing out the gate.
So tell us how the piece came to be and what the history of it is.
We essentially wanted to take a stupid idea to the Edinburgh Fringe, because we'd done Edinburgh a lot as Flo and Joan. We wanted to go back to something different. So it obviously had to be extremely low budget. So we had the idea of a musical about one person. And after wondering who that could be about, we were on a train to a theme park and said, it could be about Andrew Lloyd Webber, the man who's most famous for musicals and who, in some people's opinion, has also destroyed them at the same time. Maybe we should write his own musical. And lots of ideas flew pretty fast. And then we went away and read his autobiography just to see if he was as interesting as we remembered him to be. And his book is it's a treasure trove of anecdotes and avoidances of the truth.
And because he had avoided the truth in so many ways, we then went and bought a lot of other people's autobiographies to kind of fill in the gaps of all the stuff that he had missed out. to make sure that the missing, there was also sort of things going on beyond the end of the Phantom of the Opera, which is where his book left off. And it turns out the juicy stuff was in everyone else's books.
Did you want to put him in an honest light, or did you want to sugarcoat it, or did you want it to be, this is what we love about him, this is what we don't like about him, you, the audience, can form your own opinion? What was your intent with the piece, other than to make us laugh and smile?
I think it was to kind of present that information to people in our lens. So the kind of cheeky, this is how one person would say it, this is how we have interpreted this information, but also to leave an audience deciding for themselves. I think it's quite boring to tell an audience how they should feel. There's nothing I hate more than going to see a show where I am being told what I should be thinking about this thing. I want people to make up, and you want people to make up their own minds about stuff, which we know that's sort of happening with this, because I mean, firstly, I think a thing that helped us with that, as Rosie said, was all the time we were writing it, and still to this day, we're always changing our opinion on him. He's a very complicated person and how George portrays him as well, our actor George, who plays Andrew. It's like you feel sorry for him sometimes, where you're like, George, no, stop. We want everyone to be laughing here. So we know that people are also feeling those same ways because we can hear them leaving. And sometimes you hear people saying like, oh yeah, that was really bad what he did there, or that I can't believe they didn't mention that thing, that was really bad. And then also people who are like, oh, I haven't listened to Evita in ages. I absolutely love it. I'm going to go home and listen to it. We're like, we're not trying to get his Spotify listens up here. That's not what this is. We're sort of accidentally also promoting him at the same time as trying to kind of hold some kind of mirror up and letting the audience see what they want to see. I think people do come in and see what they want to see and hear what they want to hear, however you phrase it.
We have to mention George Fouracres here, who is incredible. What was the story with finding George?
He came in at the very last minute. We were doing self-tapes quite close to the mark. I feel like in the end of June, maybe, and Edinburgh starts at the end of July.
Wow.
So it was I don't think we quite finished the show, and then we'd got George's self-tape through, and he sang a song in his self-tape that inspired us to write the Lin-Manuel Miranda song. George delivered his song in such a specific way that we were like, that his eyes down the camera there is exactly what we need the audience to also feel in that moment. So George felt like a perfect fit. He got the comedy beats. He understands Edinburgh Fringe, which I think is its own beast, because this is a comedy show at risk of getting a cease and desist. Audiences can be strange in Edinburgh, so we needed someone who could understand if someone shouted out something in Edinburgh, that they could find some rapport or wouldn't be scared by it, which was a fear for us. And George just got it, and it was a great fix for us, and we had lots of mutual friends. And he feels like the third leg to this Flo and Joan beast.
The night I saw it, which was Tuesday night, Rosie, I was watching your face during this bit, and George was going on about this. He'd gone up to a chap in the audience, and he said, "What's your name?" And he said James or something, and he was going on and on and on about the church and how it all linked. And it's just, I take it there is lots of room for ad-libbing for George in this show.
That whole moment is improvised every single day, so he never knows who he's going up to. He never knows what the person's name is. George has an intense amount of knowledge about the etymology of people's names, and monarchies and histories, and it's absolutely insane. And people think we scripted it for him, and it's last night was Tom. I think you did have James on Tuesday.
Yeah, we had an Antoine, Aaron, Marks. Matthew's pretty common. We learned about the migration of people from Belgium to Scotland in some. It's like you get a little mini GCSE history lesson for 5 minutes.
But that works so well for the character, because Andrew is a big fan of, as you say, Gothic architecture and churches and medieval history and his pre-Raphaelites and all that kind of stuff. So it does blend itself well to the kind of random stuff Andrew might tell you. Has working on this show given you any new appreciation for Andrew Lloyd Webber?
I think the ambition of those projects, and you can't achieve them now. Like part of the origin of us wanting to write a musical for one person was we're currently writing a musical for a big cast.
Good.
And we did.
That's going to be my next question.
We did a workshop for it in April. We had, I think, 11 actors in it, but the aim is to have a big fat cast. Like, we want a lot of people in it. It's designed to have a lot of people in it. And we just kept getting told that no one makes that anymore. It's an original story, original music, and we were told no one makes it. And so
We weren't told no one makes it. We were told that it's much easier
it's a lot
to
harder to
do
make those things.
a lot harder to make those things. Yeah. So we didn't invite any producers to the workshop because we didn't want to be told no.
Yeah. But so when you look at something like, obviously the times were different, and also you have to take into consideration the connections that this person has through university and school and all of that kind of stuff that allowed them to have this these people saying yes to him and giving him all this money. And but still, Cats is an insane idea, and Starlight Express is an absolutely mad idea, but they made it happen. And I don't think that if Lin-Manuel Miranda went to someone now and said, I want to write a musical where everyone's on a motorbike, that would never happen. I don't believe that that would happen. So the kind of ambition of these insane ideas and pulling them off in a way that we're still going to watch them now. They didn't just die. Like other people have had like crazy ideas for musicals that have disappeared and you never hear about them ever again. So I really admire the ambition of someone seeing these massive ideas and somehow managing to pull them off, whatever you think of the music and the story and stuff, which I've got my own opinions on different ones, but like I do admire that in him, which I'd never sort of considered before. When you look at the landscape of what was happening in musical theatre at the time and also what it looks like now too, I think is quite impressive.
But to also counteract that, and this is our fluctuation opinions all the time, is that they were writing in Thatcher's Britain and the machine worked for the people who had money. And lots like Starlight Express feels like a Thatcherite idea. It's get on the train and the train will go fast. If you're not on the train will leave without you and you'll get run over by another train.
And also there's light at the end of the tunnel, the whole message about,
Yeah.
Light at the end of the tunnel if you have been given the golden handshake. The odds weren't stacked against them as much as someone in this current day and age. So it's the same fluctuation is absolute admiration for pulling off crazy ideas, and at the same time acknowledging that this is reminding me of a bit in the book. I can't remember what show it was and what time, but they were looking for funding for a musical. I want to say it was possibly Starlight Express, or it's one of them, one of the biggies. And Andrew one day was in his town in Sidmonton, bumped into one of his neighbours, mentioned that he was looking for funding, and the neighbour gave him some funding.
Cats was struggling opening night and nearly didn't go ahead because and friends just gave up money for it, I think.
Yeah.
There we go. There's friends to give you the golden handshake, whereas
I look forward to the Cameron McIntosh version because I think it'd be interesting to have his version of the story told from his.
Yeah.
What is that Lloyd Webber sound?
We listen to absolutely everything
sorry.
between us.
Yeah.
I know. I've listened to The Likes of Us, which is absolutely grim. And the same with By Jeeves, which I can understand.
Have you heard Jeeves, the original version?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Jeeves
Jeeves
and By Jeeves,
By Jeeves,
which are not personally for me, but good luck to if it's your favourite show, then good for you. We scoured pretty much everything, including the new ones as well, like just so that we knew. Like most of them are sort of built in, but I didn't know The Beautiful Game particularly well. Like you sort of know bits of songs, so we covered everything.
For the love song, for example, Sarah You, that felt like it had a very Phantom feel to it. That sort of light melody. We looked at a lot of our stuff has got that Jesus Christ Superstar drive. So when we're trying to tell a story, it's got a lot of like da-dun, 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 da-dun.
I think we sort of knew what his big tunes were, or sort of iconic ones, and did what fit with the story we were trying to tell at that moment. So for No One Says No, you're like, well, the song is kind of Starlight Express, but it's also a villain song. So you want something that sounds like Light at the End of the Tunnel and also Herod's song. Like we were kind of looking at this moment, this is the feeling, and maybe this is the show that we're currently at in the timeline, and sort of trying to work things out that way.
Would Andrew come and see it, or would you like him to see it?
No.
I think it would be hard for him to come and see it because he'd have to be an absolute disguise, because once the person is in the room, the audience is watching that person. I imagine he would also feel the same of, I don't want to be the person people are watching in the room. I believe he has more important things to do than watch someone write a satirical musical about his odd little book. There was an article that came out that we got sent yesterday about Tim Rice. And apparently Tim Rice knows about it, and he knows that he's being played by a bag of rice. And I think he said he thinks Andrew knows about it too. Did he say that in the article?
Or I think he said, I know he hasn't seen it. We know that his team knows about it. We're not sure if it's made it back to him. I think he's sort of an older man now. I think, like Rosie said, he's got other things to be bothered about than how he's being portrayed by a bunch of silly little comedians in Soho.
The nice thing is you got another new show to add to the list of things they're working on, because Tim and Andrew are doing new songs for a Sherlock Holmes musical, or a play with songs or something random like that.
And then
Yes.
the Illusionists is the next one, isn't he?
Yeah.
That he's doing with someone else. So yeah, if it gets extended, it will suddenly. It was a 55-minute show in Edinburgh, a 75-minute show at the moment, and maybe it will be an 85-minute show when he's added these next two to the list.
I love the whole kind of, not irony of the situation, but the whole, he writes the biggest spectacle musicals ever, and yet you managed to compress all that into the smallest thing, you know, a 3-performer piece. I want to ask, if you were to ask Andrew any question you could, what would it be?
Oh, we've never been asked that.
That's a really great question.
How much money
can you
he
pay
lose on
us?
Sunset Boulevard?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. What is his one biggest regret? What's the thing that keeps him up at night? I think I'd like to ask him that. I think.
I'd like to know if he could rewrite one of the shows that wasn't a success and replace the creative team with new people that he thinks would make it a success. What show would he pick, and who would he replace those people with?
Jamie Lloyd for everything.
Honestly, that Jamie Lloyd and Lynn.
You also perform in this show. You play and you're on the drums and you're doing backing vocals. Have you ever had the chance just to sit and watch it? I know that's an odd question, but to see it from the other side.
Never live. We filmed versions in Soho Theatre and Edinburgh, so we watched those back. We haven't watched this current show. We were just going to let it run and probably watch it back at the end.
Mm.
But I'd love to sit in the audience and watch it.
Mm. Sometimes in
Or maybe
rehearsals,
I wouldn't.
Well, in rehearsals, sometimes you would, if you didn't have your drums in, then you would be able to watch it just with piano. So like not with
Yeah.
all the bells and whistles going. You sort of, I'd love to watch it from the front with all of the kind of lights and this, that, and the other going on. You can sort of vaguely understand what's happening, but you're also trying to play the piano or send cues or play the drums or whatever at the same time. None of it's written down. So the ideal thing would be to hand it over to another pianist and drummer, get them to play it, and then we could sort of sub out once a week or something. But unfortunately, none of it's written down anywhere, so no one else can play it at the moment.
So you're both playing this from memory, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Dressed
But
as
we're playing it
cats.
from midnight.
Absolutely, a pair of Grisabellas in the back corners playing it.
Catty old cat. Yes, it is from memory, and it does change every now and again.
So how has the show changed? What songs have been cut? What songs have been rewritten? What songs have I not heard? What songs would I like to hear?
One of the ones that I'm so sad that got cut was in the first read through we did. He had a song called "How Do You Follow the Phantom When the Phantom Follows You," which was about how Phantom was the biggest show and still is probably his biggest show, and everything he wrote after that was never as big as that. So it was sort of like him being haunted by this great success that he did. I loved that one. That had to go because it wasn't quite doing the job we needed it to.
And that was when we saw George's self-tape. That song is what Lin-Manuel Miranda like holds that space now. So when we saw George sing, we took the Phantom one wasn't quite working anyway, and then Lynn came fairly quickly and worked with George. And we used to have a song called The McDonald's of Musicals. That was in, I think, the first and maybe just the first read. We did 2 read-throughs, just me and Rosie sort of joke testing and premise testing, and then one George with script in hand and one in front of an audience, I think the day before we left for Edinburgh. We really cut it quite fine testing this show out, actually.
The McDonald's of Musicals would have been, that was it. That would probably be in the No One Says No to Andrew bit.
Yeah, it was the same
It was
kind of
sort of
vibe.
the time when it was just them churning out, the money machine was working. And I think we read somewhere that in every town you'd see a 7-Eleven, Golden Arches, and a Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. So is it 7-Eleven? One of those?
Yeah,
shops
7-Eleven, McDonald's, and an
in
Andrew
America,
show.
because it was just sort of churning out delicious goods.
The ending is different this time. We've done every run, we've had a different ending. So the ending is new this time. Same vibes, but the music's different. And the lasting feeling has been different. I think this is the closest to what we want it to be.
And musicals, the big
Yeah.
musicals one, was slightly shorter, but we were in Edinburgh because we were having to rush through that 55 minutes. It was like, and then I wrote Jesus Christ Superstar, and then I wrote this, and then I wrote that. So we just tried to lengthen that to give it a bit of time. And No One Says No to Andrew wasn't in there in Edinburgh. That was added in Soho.
Yeah.
So yes.
You two are, in my mind, excellent comedy songwriters, and that's very obvious from this show and all the other work that you've done. As a songwriter talking to songwriters, how is it for you working on comedy songs with no one to bounce off?
Well, normally if we're writing Flo and Joan songs, we have the idea between us. So the first step is, I find this funny, does she find it funny? So if the other one says that's a funny idea, you're like, great, that is the first hump. And then we write it.
Don't say the first hump again.
Sorry, that's the first shag, sorry. And okay, no. Sort of nicer than a normal comedy podcast we do where we're just horrible little rats. The first step, and then we write it. If it feels like it takes a long time to write, that can often be an indication of like, this might not be working.
Yep.
If the jokes come quite easily, then you're like, okay, we might be okay. The next boom is putting it in front of an audience and just trying it. Sometimes we'll write a bit of the song to see if the premise works, because if the premise doesn't work, then we learned early on that we would write long 5-minute songs, and within 30 seconds, I'd say 10 seconds actually, an audience has told us this isn't working. But there's no kind of like emergency exit pull. We have to keep singing those 5-minute songs in front of an audience. But we've got better at that now and just trying little bits and pieces. But for this one, we just went on gut instinct for a bit and then put in 2 little small work in progress shows to just see, for us to sing it ourselves and see if the idea worked, see if an audience who didn't know what they were getting at all. So we just put on a show at the Bill Murray pub in London and just said, we're working out a new idea for Edinburgh, come and see what you think. So it was, I think people probably thinking that it was a Flo and Joan show, and when most of that largely went, it wasn't a disaster in front of a non-musical audience, or like an audience that didn't know they were coming to see a musical. We sort of thought, okay, we might be okay. And then we just kind of joke tested, and you just sort of change little bits and pieces as we go. But yeah, I think that's sort of, it wasn't too dissimilar for this to a normal Flo and Joan show. We just give ourselves a bit more time with Flo and Joan.
If you think that our tour show we wrote over a year and a half,
Yeah.
right? I suppose we had a bit of COVID in there, but this was written in 3 months.
3 months?
Wow.
The first song was written separately before Christmas, and then the rest was written between April, May, and June.
Yeah.
And the last song went in at the end of July.
The audacity, the absolute
didn't
barefaced
even-
audacity.
Did we have? Yeah, I think we just speed wrote something for the end of July.
Yeah, George sang it
Whoops.
once in front of an audience, and then we opened in Edinburgh.
What would you like to happen with the show in the future? Palladium? That would be the ultimate irony, wouldn't it?
I think we might be banned from many big theatres in the West
Yeah,
End
I
now.
think there will be one of those like scanners where as soon as we walk in, they've profiled us as the 2 people that aren't allowed in Drury Lane or the Palladium anymore. We'll have to go in like big masked singer suits or something.
Just half a mask.
Yeah, yeah, over this bit. We're doing it in at the Melbourne Comedy Festival from the end of March to the end of April. So we're doing it for a month there, so that would be fun. And we were a little bit nervous because we didn't know sort of how well Andrew's music travels, but they've just had a big revival of Sunset Boulevard over there with Sarah Brightman, and the Regent's Park Jesus Christ Superstar is touring there at the moment.
My friend Ruben was in that as King Herod.
Ruben Kay!
Ruben Kay, yeah.
Oh, he's a dear friend of ours.
Yeah.
We're going to go into, they're in Melbourne while we're there. We're going to do like a little school trip to see it.
Cool. The nice thing about what you've got here is it's the intrigue of, what have they done with this story and how are they going to tell it? He is a brand, really, isn't he?
Yeah.
Whether he likes it or not.
I think he does
Yes.
like it. I think it's all incredibly intentional. I think he's personally, there's no, like, Tim Rice isn't on the one show promoting their new musical. It's Andrew who's going on there, and it's Andrew going on Graham Norton and doing these kind of things. Like, I think he's someone who wants to be, he knows that he is a brand.
It does annoy me when you look at the posters for Phantom and it's Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera. There's no credit,
Yeah.
there's no lyricist credit, there's no director credit, but that is the name
Yeah.
that gets people in the doors,
Yeah.
isn't it?
That was one of
Yes.
I think we had an idea for a song that was something, it was going to be something to do with like, no one remembers the lyricists or something. It felt a little bit harsh, and by that point we sort of had other things going on, and we couldn't quite make it work. But that was no one remembers anyone else involved in any of his shows. They only remember him. And I
I think
don't
that's
think
what makes him so interesting. So I think part of remembering someone's name is good and bad.
Yeah.
So you put yourself in the line of fire by doing that. You can't. You shouldn't be surprised that someone's going to write a musical about you when you have asked for people to remember your name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your influences. I'm guessing Tom Lehrer, Fascinating Aida, all that kind of Forbidden Broadway, all that kind of. Am I in the right kind of avenue here?
Yeah, Victoria Wood.
Yeah.
Those kind of vibes. I think Victoria Wood was the kind of prominent one, and then I think we both found, without knowing he was Tom Lehrer, knew Tom Lehrer because of Hey Mr. Producer and him doing Poisoning Pigeons in the Park on there. And as like 7-year-olds thinking that was very, very funny.
Yeah.
And now as adult and knowing like the periodic table song and those kind of things, and then putting those pieces together and being like, oh, that's that guy. Yeah. So yeah, Fascinating Aida, Victoria Wood. Also loads of musical theatre. We listened to loads of musical theatre and were taken to see our local amateur, the Portsmouth Players. Always went to see them. So a lot of that. And then just like our mum listened to loads of music just in general. So there was always just different music on just in the house, in the car. There was always like one day it would be Billy Joel, then it would be Cats, then it would be, I don't know, Classic FM or whatever. We were always angry about Classic FM. But like there was always just a lot of music. And I think musical theatre and then like sort of the comedy stuff stood out, I think, more than other stuff.
And probably Tim Minchin in our teenage years. He was probably the first person we saw doing pointed opinions, I'd say, like on angry opinions. So I think that probably gave us the courage to also put larger opinions in a song.
Before we end this, give us the last final big sell as to why people should go and see One Man Musical.
Because it's funny. It's really funny. That was a terrible sell, wasn't it? People should come and see One Man Musical because it is very funny. My favorite thing at the end of the night is when in the finale, the audience, the lights shine on the audience a little bit. And 95% of people have an open smile in that bit. I find it so weird because even in shows that are a bit quieter, a bit more of a theatre audience, I'm like, oh, maybe they didn't enjoy this. But in that last moment, I can see teeth. So it feels like, I think it's a show that lifts people up, no matter what you know about the man. We've had lots of friends come to see it who have no idea who Andrew Lloyd Webber is, and still had a best time and come back and bring other people. So I would say it's the 75 minutes of good old-fashioned comedy
and music,
some beautiful tunes
and entertainment, some lovely tunes.
Yeah.
Some of my favourite tunes that we've ever written are in that show.
Yeah, that's so true.
The music is excellent, the lyrics are excellent, and the it's genuinely very funny. I will second that. Thank you very, very much for coming on Musical Talk, and good luck with the rest of the show. And I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you so much
for having us.
Many thanks to Nicola and Rosie there, aka Flo and Joan, for coming on Musical Talk. And for more information about One Man Musical, you can simply visit onemanmusical.com. This has been an episode of Musical Talk. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Musical Talk. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk, you can visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk, where you'll find all our episodes, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Musical Talk.